this audience. One is, as Lee said, China now has the upper hand. China is our adversary, smells weakness in all of its relationships with the United States because of the weak policies of Harris, Biden, and Bob Casey, who's been a 98% vote.
Right.
The second bad thing that's happening is our family farms, as you're hearing, our farms across Pennsylvania are struggling. Agriculture is the biggest industry in Pennsylvania. We have 52,000 farms. And under the Biden, Harris, Casey administration, it's been a disaster. Everywhere I go, I hear the skyrocketing prices, the price of inflation. I hear the burden of regulation. I hear the implications of the war on fossil fuels and what it's done to our farmers. And so when you're back in the White House and we have a majority in the Senate to support your agenda, and I've heard you talk about this, I think the people in this room can have a lot of confidence in fair reciprocal trade. Under your leadership, we had that. We've lost that. We'll get that again. Under your leadership, we can make sure we reduce our dependence on China for semiconductors, for pharmaceuticals. We got to have food security. And the people in this room are the providers of food security, not just for Pennsylvania, but for America. You know, we got to stop this buying of farmland. It's going up dramatically. It hasn't hit Pennsylvania much yet, but nationally it's growing dramatically. It'll come to Pennsylvania too. I know you're going to stop that. And then finally, I'm so glad you said it, energy. I mean, the reason many of these family farms are still operating is because of the energy revolution, the royalties that come from the wells on their properties, the incomes coming from energy workers. So this is a very simple choice for the people in this room and the farmers across Pennsylvania. It's a choice between strength and weakness. It's a choice between common sense policies that get our economy back on track, create a balance in our relationship with China, get the upper hand again, and unlock our energy versus a radical liberal agenda under Harris and Casey, which will take our country further in the wrong direction. I think I can say with a lot of confidence, Mr. President, the Pennsylvania farmers, the agriculture community here has your back. Thank you.
I think they do. Thank you. And you're right, David. Bob Casey, and I've been there for a long time, actually, 4 years, but a long time. He has done nothing for the farmer. He has not been there. He's 100% with the Biden vote. I guess just about 100% of the time. Bob Casey is not the right one. This gentleman right here, he's tough, he's smart, and he loves the farmer, and we're going to turn it around. But Bob Casey cannot help us. He has never done it. Not good for the farmer. So I think you probably learned that the hard way. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Darrell Becker is the Fayette County Farm Bureau president. This time I'd like to introduce Darrell Becker.
Thank you. As Mr. Zeldin said, my name is Darrell Becker. I'm a 30-year Fayette County farmer who operates a beef, sheep, and hog farm with my wife, 2 adult children, and my son-in-law. And we have an intergenerational family. I have 3 of my grandkids live with me. It's wonderful. I also serve as president of the Fayette County Farm Bureau for the last 6 years, and I'm also the chairman of the Land Preservation Board for the last 6 years. And I was going to talk about land preservation, but I got beat up by my local members who tell me that I need to talk about soybeans. So I will tell you that we all know that China has no desire to buy products from us. We know that from what happened in your last administration when they didn't even want to deal with fair trade. They're working on being less dependent on U.S. goods, and likewise, we need to be less dependent on them. This is incredible. Last week, news came out from California's All Resources Board, CARB, a governing body in charge of the state's air quality rules, who wants to mandate a limit on the amount of biodiesel fuel produced from soybean and canola oil. Under the proposal, beginning in 2028, they would only be eligible for low-carbon fuel standards who use canola and things will only be able to get 20% of the credits of their annual production. Those replacing American grain production used for oil will be assigned a higher carbon intensity score, thus reducing the interest in U.S. bean products. Meanwhile, the USDA has just reported that renewable diesel fuel imports surged 30% higher last year in the first 5 months of this year so that they could take advantage of these federal and state tax credits. In addition, imports of used cooking oil from China are flowing into the U.S. like never before to capture these biofuel tax credits. Farm Bureau and other biofuel advocates are pressing regulators to close the loophole so that only domestic producers are eligible for these tax credits. Because of this change, estimates project that American farmers in California alone would lose 200,000 acres of production. This is diametrically opposed to what American agriculture is all about. We know China's not our friend. Figures, that's why I got to read. I can't remember all these things. 2024 corn receipts are down 20%. Soybean receipts are down 14%. Wheat receipts are down 12%. Government payments to make up the shortfall are not due until October 2025. Expenses for 2025 may expect to decline 1%, but last year in 2009, China bought 49% of our exported soybeans. Now it's 31%. 70% of our bean crop goes to animal feed. Bean exports in 2023 were $34.4 billion. In 2024, they're estimated to be $27 billion. China owns 384,000 acres of our farmland. That's up 30% in the last 5 years. And guess what? The American government can't buy farmland in China. They don't allow us.
That's right.
Can you imagine that? At present, the U.S. has a huge supply of soybeans sitting at a multi-year low price, sometimes being sold below production cost. Farmers are using reserve funds to buy and produce soybeans now. There's no cash flow available to them due to the low price. You know this is unsustainable. So soybean farmers definitely need our help. Sustainable aviation fuel also uses soy, canola, and other seed crops from American farmer, and this is also under attack. We are putting ourselves at extreme risk in the supply chain, knowing that a huge amount of the herbicide 2,4-D and many repair parts for agricultural use are imported from China. How much risk can we absorb and rely upon a country that is trying to replace us? We need to build domestic demand. Our government needs to invest in American agriculture. American farmers want a free market that can sustain the industry. They don't want handouts. They don't want loans. They want to be able to produce their farms. They're all hard. This is the backbone of America. The current administration has shown that they are not friendly to American agriculture. Every producer that I spoke to for this presentation resonated the same message. We cannot survive another 4 years. Mr. President, my 3 grandkids who live with me. If you could see Henry, who's 3, and Holden, who's 2, get into the UTV and drive down to what they call the big barn when we feed our steers, or they go pick chicken eggs, or they help us move cattle. The spark in their eye, the smile on their face, that's the future of America, and I want to make sure it stays here, and I know you do too. So I guess they all said that we wouldn't survive 4 years. I'm sure that when you get elected, that my line would be, help us make American agriculture great again.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. It's not very difficult to do. We're just being ripped off by other countries, and not only China, by the way, but we're being ripped off at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And this administration has allowed it to happen because you were making probably the best you've ever done 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You were doing better. All farmers were. They were doing better than they ever did. And now they're doing very better. I mean, I hear more complaints from farmers than almost anybody, and that's the backbone of this country. So they'll be very happy for a long time to come, okay?
Can I add one more thing and say to you that we've seen the decline of the mom and pop stores. And what you're hearing is that we're seeing the decline of the American family farm. That's America. So, I mean, anybody that's not paying attention to what's going on needs to wake up and get out and vote. And we know who they got to vote for. You, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I love your hat, too, by the way. I noticed it right away. Thank you very much. We'll take care of them. Your grandchildren will be farmers. And they'll be maybe doing better than you do, okay? Thank you very much.
Before we introduce our final speaker, Kevin Sweeney, just wanted to say thank you to my former colleague, Chairman G.T. Thompson, the chair of the House Committee on Agriculture. We have Tim Ward, the Senate President here in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Dan Mall, who is the GOP chair of the Pennsylvania House Ag and Rural Affairs. At this time, we're going to introduce our final speaker, Kevin Sweeney, who's a cattle farmer from Washington County. Kevin?
Thank you. Mr. President, I want to thank you for your personal sacrifice for us and your family. Thank you. I'm 71 years old. I'm a new farmer. I've owned my property since 1988. I'm a retired physical therapist, and I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids, and my goal is to develop this farm and make it a legacy farm like some of the people around the table are now talking. I raise beef and sell hay. That's all I can do. My soil is type 7 soil. The USDA has a soil map of the entire country. That soil is only good for raising grass and beef, and maybe grow some trees for timber. But I'm trying to expand it each year. I have a customer base that's getting bigger each year, and I've been full-time retired since 2019, and that's what I do. The issue that I want to talk about today in regard to China is solar panels. I'm being approached, and other farmers are being approached. The current offer is $3,000 a month per acre per year for the next 30 years. That's a lot of money. Who's subsidizing that? Is our government behind these people that are offering us this money? Where's that coming from?
Well, they are.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
That's right. They are, and they're allowing China to come in and just dominate the industry. That's right. They're sending panels over. Many of them very defective, very bad panels, but they're sending them over, and they are really putting a lot of people out of work. But that's amazing.
Issue.
That's a form of subsidy.
Most of the small farms that are around me, I'm very close to Enlow Fork Bailey Mine Complex. It's one of there's the top 10 underground coal mines in the country, and they're in that group. They mine a lot of coal. All that coal goes down the railroad, into the rivers, and goes to China. Okay, and it's unfortunate. These companies I'm surrounded by have bought up a lot of the small farms that I was fortunate enough to buy in 1988. They were beef farms. They were the same type of farmers as mine, but they own all these. They own all this property. Okay, my concern is, what if one of these foreign entities come in, and even though they don't own the land, they buy that company and indirectly have control of the lease or that land and are able to use it for whatever reason. My other concern is the federal government. What if, for public use, they come in and say that they want to take my farm and put solar panels on it? What guarantee do any of us have that the government, Big Brother, won't come in and do that to us? We need to know about that. That concerns me. In the news right now is the sale of U.S. Steel to Japan. Okay, and I just happened to be researching it. I didn't realize that U.S. Steel has a land division, a huge land division. They have vast holdings in this country. So when Japan buys U.S. Steel, they're buying a lot of land with it. Will they have the ability to put solar panels on it or use it for another purpose? We don't know. It concerns me. U.S. Steel also owns a lot of coal mines and iron ore mines, which I didn't realize. They have all these iron ore mines out west, and a foreign entity is now going to own all those. And I've said this for a long time. I'm from the Mon Valley, and when I grew up, there were steel mills everywhere. Everybody in my family worked for steel mills. There's none left. They're torn down. They're not even there. The same with coal-fired power plants. They're gone. Should we have some sort of a strategic plan to keep some of these steel mills and to keep some of this stuff as a strategic reserve, whether it's minerals, not only oil, but coal, iron ore, those sort of things? It concerns me that that's just going to go away to foreign countries. It worries me. I have a couple of tax concerns, one being the death tax. My 4 kids, what's going to happen when I'm 71 years old when I'm not here? They're going to pay big money, or they're going to have to sell out, or they're going to have to go get solar panels to keep the property. So, if you can do something about the death tax, appreciate it. So.
By the way, the death tax is, in the Trump bill, you don't have to pay a death tax or a inheritance tax. And under them, they want that terminated. They want you to pay. And what happens, especially with farmers, you're sort of land rich but cash poor. A lot of farmers are land rich and you love it, but you don't always have cash. And you leave it to your loved ones. You leave it to your children, which you want to do. That's what the ultimate is. If you love your children. In some cases, you don't love your children. You don't have to leave them anything. But generally, you love your children. And you leave. You have no problem with your children. But you leave it to your children. And what was happening is people were going out borrowing a lot of money in order to pay the tax, borrowing from the banks on their farm, big liens on the farm, very smart banks that know how to do it. And the children would go bust, or they'd spend everything they could to pay the tax, and they'd live a very tough life and usually lose the land. I got rid of that. You have no tax to pay on these small farms and businesses, and it's a great thing. Nobody talks about it much. The fake news doesn't ever talk about it, but it's a tremendous factor. And I mean, it was one of the things that I was happiest about, because literally farmers are going out of business. Children, they take the farm from their parents, and they have to go out borrow a lot of money, and they can't afford to do it, and they can't pay the interest rates. They end up losing the farm over a short period of time. So we got rid of the estate tax or the death tax, and now it will come back under play under Comrade Kamala. That's what happens. That's not good.
What about our capital gains tax? Are we going to keep that down?
Well, that's the worst. I mean, they have unrealized capital gain. How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Unrealized. So they want to give you a capital gain if the value of your land goes up. Nobody's ever heard of it before. It's a communist thing, It's a communist thing. It's unrealized capital gain. You'll have every business person, every company leaving this country. It's called an unrealized capital gain. And it's a concept that's been talked about for years. I don't know if any country has even done it, but she wants to do it here. And, come to think of it, now that I'm with farmers, it'll affect farmers probably worse than
We have
anybody.
all the minerals under us, which we own, and they're going to put a value on those, and even though we haven't taken
You know who's going to make a lot of money? Appraisers, lawyers, and accountants.
Well, I have two accountants, two sons, my sons are accountants.
They'll be very happy.
It's crazy. I have some expenses regarding fuel, okay? And I had the opportunity to call up my fuel provider last Thursday when I found out I was going to be here. And I'll just give you a couple of numbers. Use a fair amount of off-road diesel. Off-road diesels come down in price, surprisingly, in an election year. Yeah. Right now, 2024, I can buy off-road diesel for $2.95 a gallon, okay? In 2020, $1.86. Regular diesel, I use for my truck. It has a road tax and stuff on it. It's around $4.50 a gallon now. Back in 2020, it was around $2.80. Non-ethanol gasoline, ethanol gasoline, as much as we want to have ethanol, it's not good for small equipment, chainsaws and all the small equipment. It eats up the carburetors. It's really not a good thing to have in small equipment. So I use non-ethanol gas. Right now, it's $4 a gallon. 2020, it was around $3.15. So it's gone up. Propane I use to heat with, it stayed about the same. It was $1.97 a gallon in 2024. In 2020, it's $1.65. But, the other thing, I line my fields, because the pH, is low. You got to have a certain pH to grow good grass, just like the golf course. You understand that part. Anyways, just recently, I had an arrangement to have some delivered and spread. It was $45 or $50 a ton. They called me, well, there's been a price increase. It's $70 a ton now, just out of the clear blue. It's increased my expense. Fertilizer was $600 a ton. I'm paying $1,000 a ton for fertilizer now. I mean, it's just costs are out of control. The only thing that helps me is the fracking and the money that I was able to get from that. It's allowed me to keep my equipment. It's allowed me to buy another farm adjacent to me. And I'm hopeful that the fracking continues, and I know it will. And I'm hoping we get more of it so that my kids won't have to be forced at my demise to sell the farm to pay the tax.
You'll be around a long time. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
But it will not continue.
I'm not a worrier.
They get in, the fracking will not continue. I guarantee you that.
My concern in this environment is that small family farms in Pennsylvania are in peril from two sources. One is the foreign competition we talked about, and the second, I believe, is the federal government. And we need to be left alone. Just get out of our lives, leave us alone, we'll figure it out. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Mr. President, I know you're about to get on the road to an amazing rally up in Indiana, but before you leave, and I know Ambassador Grinnell had some final words, would like to turn the floor over to our next president, Mr.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been great. I love the farmers. I'm very comfortable with the farmers. I feel I know your business, but I haven't plowed quite as much as you, but I do know your business very well. We've had a tremendous relationship. I've always won with the farmers, and that's because I produce promises made, promises kept. Number one, your energy bill within 12 months will be cut in half, and that's my pledge all over the country. Beyond farmers, that's my pledge all over the country. We have more energy under our feet than any other country. I call it liquid gold. And we have more than any other country. We have Anwar in Alaska, which the first thing they did, the Biden-Harris administration, everybody wanted it. It's the biggest. It could be as big or bigger than Saudi Arabia, and would have supplied Asia, would have supplied vast parts of the world, would have made more money than you can even imagine. We were going to lower your taxes, pay off debt. They terminated it. Reagan wanted it, couldn't get it. Everybody wanted it, couldn't get it. I got it. They were all set to drill, and the first thing they did the first week is they terminated Anwar, but I can get it back very quickly because I got it through Congress, and we'll get it back very quickly. They didn't terminate it through Congress. They just terminated it. Just absolutely ridiculous. But I'll have your energy bill down within 12 months. We'll have your energy bills throughout the country. I'm not just talking here. I'm talking all over. Air conditioning, heating, everything. We'll have it down by 50%, 50, and it won't even be very hard. Up in New England, they have tremendous energy costs, and a few minor changes, and we can reduce it. New England is a disaster. I won't say they vote for Democrats so much anymore. I think we're probably taking that over because of energy and because of a lot of other reasons. But we're going to protect your fracking. In my case, I was always for it, and in her case, she was never for it. She wants to defund the police, too. All of a sudden, she likes the police. It started a short while ago. I really like the police a lot. Now, she wanted to defund the police. She did things in Minnesota that were so bad. She was bailing out people that wanted to kill the police and were actually trying to kill the police and burning down Minneapolis. So we're going to do things the way you wanted. A big factor here is, with all of you as I speak, is energy in two ways. Number one, you want to be able to collect royalties and other things, or even have a job in energy. That's very important to help your farm. And the other thing is you got to keep the prices down. So we're going to do both, and we'll do it fast too. It'll be largely taken care of within 12 months. I predict within 12 months it'll be down 50%. And if they get in, your energy costs are going through the roof. Okay, they're going to go through the roof. You won't have a farm very long. I will tell you that. I just noticed behind me John Deere tractors. I know a lot about John Deere. I love the company, but as you know, they've announced a few days ago that they're going to move a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States, so that if I win, John Deere is going to be paying a 200%. They haven't started it yet. Maybe they haven't even made the final decision yet, but I think they have. John Deere is going to, and anybody else that does this, because it's hurting our farmers, it's hurting our manufacturing. And if you do that, you're going to have a 200% tariff put on the product that you make in Mexico, right across the border. They think they're going to make product cheaper in Mexico and then sell it in for the same price as they did before, make a lot of money by getting rid of our labor and our jobs, and really a great name, because John Deere's a great name. I buy a lot of John Deere, tremendous. I'm one of their big customers. I buy a lot of John Deere product as a private person. But if they're going to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on everything that they want to send back into the United States, which means one of two things. Our country's going to make a lot of money, or they're not going to build, they're not going to open, and or they're going to sell it to another country. They're entitled to do that. If they want to build in the country, in the United States, there's no tariff. You can go ahead and you can build in any one of the 50 states. You can go ahead. But if they don't want to do that, we're going to put a 200% tariff on John Deere. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to announce very shortly. If they think I'm going to win, or if I do win, they're going to announce that they're not going to build in Mexico. Mexico's taken a tremendous amount of our business, especially over the last few years with this group, because this group doesn't know what the hell they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. Mexico is taking a lot of business, and a lot of it's done and financed by China. China is building massive car plants now in Mexico. And it's the same thing they're building. And a friend of mine builds car plants, and he said the biggest ones in the world are being built in Mexico. They're going to put Detroit out of business. They're going to put car manufacturing out of business in the United States. And I'm just telling everybody involved in this stuff, we're not going to rip off the United States anymore. We're going to put big tariffs on those cars that are coming in here at 100 to 200%, and they're no longer going to be competitive. So you better stay in Michigan, and you better stay in the areas that you're in right now. And what I really want you to do is come in and build your plants in this country and put our auto workers to work, because we've lost about 60% of our auto working business over the years. And we're going to get it all back, every one of them. We're going to get it all back, and we're going to get it back quickly. And we can control that so easily. So if they're building those plants in Mexico, which they're starting, if they're building, and they wouldn't have done it with me, but now I guess they figure when they started, it was a little while ago, I guess they didn't even know I was going to run. They weren't too happy when they heard I was going to. But they're going to have to pay a tremendous tariff, which means two things. They're not going to build the plant. If it's not too late, they're not going to build the plant. This country's going to make a lot of money. Or they're going to build the plant, but they're going to build it in the United States somewhere, and ideally a place like Michigan or South Carolina, where we have a lot of auto business. But we're not going to let that happen. But John Deere has got to understand that if they build in Mexico, they start closing plants. In this case, it was in Iowa. They're going to close a big plant, and a couple of them. And that's just the beginning. The problem is that's just the beginning. Then all of a sudden you'll hear in a year from now they're going to do another one. All of a sudden they're not going to be in the country anymore. They're going to have to pay a very big price to be able to sell that product into the United States. Okay, so that's very important. And I just have to say this. So Dave McCormick is here. He's running for the Senate. He's a great gentleman. He's a hero, great warrior, and he's a real warrior too. Served incredibly in the military, so highly respected, did great in the military, went out, did tremendously in the private sector, and he's running against Bob Casey. Bob Casey never did anything for you. He never did anything for Pennsylvania. I was president for 4 years. I don't even know if I ever met him. I mean, I met everybody. I don't know if I met him. Maybe I did, but it certainly didn't make a hell of an impression on me. But Bob Casey has done